know the respective, sorry, my name is Peter Andrews from Transition Bath. We'll start in about 2 minutes' time when I've got my timekeeper. I think Bruce is gone. Thank you all for coming. If you haven't moved as far as you can that way, that's good. Shut the doors. It's very good to see so many people so interested in politics. Just a quick sound check. Can you hear me at the back? Good. That's fine. Right. I'm not sure what to do if you'd said no. Right. Okay, so welcome. This is Transition Bath seems to have made a tradition of doing a hustings. Obviously, we as an environmental group are extraordinarily interested in what prospective candidates have to say about environmental matters, and we mean environment in the broadest sense. So the new Metro Mayor is going to have a great effect on the things that happen for us. People sort of say, well, it's the 8th of June or whatever. I don't think it is. It's the 4th of May that's going to be really important. Whoever's elected and the policies they bring in will affect you almost immediately, and they will affect you quite strongly. So vote early, vote often. No. It's a strange system we're using. I can't remember what its name is. You get 2 votes, so you really have to think what you do with your second vote. If you still don't understand it, I've got a few more election booklets here, which you're welcome to there. In case there's a fire, exits are there and there. We'll meet out there. I don't know how we'll count you. The gents' toilets are right at the bottom. The women's are halfway on the landing. So, welcome from Transition Bath. For those of you who don't know us, we're an environmental group, and we're obsessed, you could say, with the impact of climate change and diminishing resources, particularly oil and water. Interestingly enough, with the exception of Aaron Foote, who isn't here today, all of the candidates have indicated that they believe in climate change and that it is man-made. So that is a great step in the right direction. So Transition Bath looks for practical solutions. I don't know if they're all here. We have an energy group run by Philip, if you want to see him afterwards. We have a food group run by Virginia, who's not here yet. Yes, here she is, Virginia. And we have a transport group run by Ped, who is there. So if you want to talk to them about any issues afterwards, don't forget, if you don't get your question answered now, you can still write to these lovely people, and I'm sure, absolutely positive, they'll answer you. Right, okay. So time is short, we need to get started. The way it's going to work is each of the candidates is going to have 3 minutes. I'm going to be very strong in this time to introduce themselves. Obviously you would love to take each one of them down the pub and grill them for an hour or 2 hours on their policies and feed them lots of local beer so that you actually start to get the truth out of them. But I'm hoping that we actually get proper answers as opposed to politicians' answers to some of our questions. So there'll be a 3-minute introduction. During that time we'll take the answers to their short questions. By the way, all of the questions were put by you guys that we're going to use. We crowdsourced them, we sort of put them down. If your question wasn't asked, there will be a short time at the end to have a go. I don't know, but as I say, write to your prospective candidates. So there'll be 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Then we'll ask them 3 longer questions, one on each: transport, skills, and I can't remember the other one.
Housing, land use.
Good job, you're all right. Housing. And then we'll finish off with a general question. So I'm going to keep very much to time. The first person to go is, in fact, the UKIP member, Aaron Foote, who isn't here. So what I'm going to do is just quickly run through the questions he answered, and then the first one to go up after that will be Tim. So if you want to... Yeah? Oh, am I going to do it? Bridget?
Darren's the next one.
Darren's the next one. Okay. Aaron Foote, sorry. So Aaron Foote first, then Darren. So these are the questions that we asked. And these are the answers he gave. Don't worry, they will come on our website. Philip has promised me he'll do it before he goes on holiday tomorrow. So you'll be able to check what they think about the various... Oh, that's interesting. Look. That's that. Transport. Those are his answers. I'm going to have to go through them quickly because I need to get through. But I suppose once you've read them, my speech. There we go. I won't insult you by reading them out. Interestingly, almost the only thing the candidates agreed on was that Box and Caution needed a station. Also that we need low carbon zones, and all favoured a low carbon economy. And that climate change is man-made. So there is some. I always like to start with the positive, so there is a good start.
Yeah, I don't think Aaron said that he thought it was man-made.
Did you not?
No.
Okay.
Science not yet proven.
Science not yet proven.
That's you know for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it. There we are. So what I'm going to do is ask Darren to stand up. He's got 3 minutes. I'm going to time him and hear what he has to say.
Good evening, everybody. What a great crowd there is here tonight. So fantastic to see you. 20 years ago, there or thereabouts, I was lucky enough to go snorkeling in the Red Sea in Egypt. And when I returned home, I was full of praise about the amazing biodiversity I saw on that trip. And my brother, who then was greener than I was, said, I'm glad you enjoyed it because it's about to die out. And what do you mean? And he told me about ocean acidification, the process of CO2 leaching into the seas and killing off the corals. And that changed my life. There and then, I was so dismayed to hear about it. And yeah, I'm sure lots of you now know that the Great Barrier Reef is indeed disappearing in front of our very eyes. Well, since then, I've been lucky enough to be a board member of Sustainability Southwest, which helped me go through this process of learning and understanding just how deeply important an environmental point of view is to the future of everything. Now, my role in this election is to make sure that people hear that voice for climate change, hear that voice for the environment, and understand that it is about balancing people, planet, and profit. Because if we don't, we're setting ourselves up to fail. Most recently, I was lucky enough to be able to lead the team that helped win the European Green Capital Award for Bristol for 2015. And it was an amazing opportunity to set the scene on the next generation of smart urban living. Because various estimates vary, but over the next couple of decades, over half of the world's citizens are going to be living in urban environments. And increasingly, we're going to lose that connection with the natural environment that helps us understand and fosters that sense of connection with everything that I'm sure a lot of you here find so precious. So the government is defining this devolution agenda almost purely through economic terms. Those key performance indicators are about growth, and more growth. And if there's one thing I want to achieve through this process, is to say that prosperity is more than just GDP. Prosperity is about understanding the balance of the social and the environmental justice movement as two sides of the same coin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If we could hear from Tim now, followed by Leslie.
Is there somebody on the stop?
Yep, I'll give you 1 minute and 30
wonderful.
seconds.
Sorry, otherwise I'm going to end up putting my thing on the phone. I'm awful that if I'm constantly doing this. Good evening. Hello. I think you've heard I'm Tim Bowles. I'm the Conservative candidate for the West of England Regional Mayor elections. And I think the important thing that I bring to every conversation that we have like this is that the role is about somebody who can champion the region. And it's important that we remember it's the entire region. We have a huge area, something in the region of about 1 million people. And we've got people living in city centres, we've got people living in rural areas, we've got people living in fringes around cities. So whatever we do, we have to be thinking about people in the entire region. And that's certainly the way I'm trying to address all of the challenges that face us. Yes, Darren's right. The way in which we will be judged in terms of this success, in terms of how we will be able to attract additional funding for the future to start making long-term differences, is in terms of how we do go about the growth in the region. That needs to be on an economic basis so that we can actually create the funds. We're already a net contributor back to Whitehall, but that we can increase those funds to be able to flow back to us. The important thing about this role is it allows us to make regional decisions. Decisions at the moment that's being made by Westminster, and that's the whole point of devolving those to us. So you need somebody who's going to be able to sit with our 3 council leaders and be constructive and make long-term changes. This role needs to be about making long-term changes over the next 2-3 decades that will really have a benefit to all of us. Now, the real criteria here in terms of how these things work are based around transport, are based around housing, jobs and skills, and that's where somebody can make some real differences for the long term. In terms of transport, yes, I think every one of us here will agree we need to be getting away from the reliance on the motor car. We need to be ensuring that we're getting journeys more effective. We need to be planning the communities for the future in terms of our building so that people have the infrastructure around them where communities exist. We need to ensure that the leaders with the council leaders are able to drive that agenda in making sure that homes are more efficient in terms of energy use. There are hundreds of ways in terms of our skills agenda which we can actually make a difference in the region by making us real champions and powerhouses for renewable energy production in terms of technology, driving businesses that are focused on that so we can make a real long-term difference in those sort of roles, and I assure you that's the sort of thing I'll be championing for everybody in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. If we could hear from Leslie, followed by Stephen.
Thank you, and also welcome to all of you coming out on this lovely evening. For a long time now, I've been listening to a band called Grateful Dead, and if you don't know them, do look them up. They've got a fabulous song called Throwing Stones, but the sentiment in that is around, here we are on this blue planet, and politicians are throwing stones rather than looking at how we preserve it, because what we have is an infinite resource, a finite resource, rather than an infinite resource. And for me, that's something I've thought about for quite a long time and tried to practice in everything I do. From when my mother took me out as a child across the countryside, telling me about trees and flowers and all that basic stuff, which has stood me in good stead. And what I would want to do as Metro Mayor would be to make sure that every contract has a green element in it. So if we're going to be building, we're going to make sure that we preserve ancient trees. If we're going to be looking at transport, which is a huge issue in terms of congestion, which costs about £350 million a year, that we're looking at greener transport, but also looking at ways to get people onto public transport or cycling, and again looking at development so we make sure that we are building those in, so walking spaces as well as cycling spaces. It's quite interesting, I've been lobbied by the people regarding the cable car. I think that's a really innovative opportunity. I'd like to look a bit more at the actual detail of that, because here we are with something different. It would be green, it wouldn't cost so much, but there's lots of opposition to it as well. So at the moment they're saying it's a really slick presentation, similar to the Virgin Health, very slick presentation. So I don't want to be sucked in by that, but I would like to hear more from everyone. And that's what I want to do as a Metro Mayor. Listen to what people have to say so we can fit priorities work on things together rather than just saying we're going to do this. It's not the way forward. I also don't support fracking, and also I am keen on sustainable energy. So we've got to look at how we can make sure that energy is more, it's cheaper, but it's always also we must find a way of making sure that it's not pumping out the carbon that it does at the minute. And I'm very much in favour of sea turbines, which is not necessarily the direct responsibility of the Metro Mayor, but certainly it's not just about working with 3 local authorities, it's also about working with North Somerset as well. So I think that will be another way forward that will be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leslie. We can have Stephen now follow.
Could you put a second slide up, please, if we didn't get to see it?
Yeah, you flick
I
through it twice.
apologise, it's this very light touch and it jumps very easily.
We're online, it'll be online.
Okay, just very
No, Stephen. Back one.
Yeah, the next one, that one.
Oh.
Thank you.
Great, photograph?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, okay, Stephen, so the floor is yours.
Right, hello everybody. Great to see generally a packed audience. Quite a lot of our hustings have been various sizes, but this is the only one that is truly packed out. It's great to see. I'm glad you're all here because you're obviously excited about what's going to happen on May the 4th, because we're in dreadful danger of stumbling towards next Thursday, and a lot of people not appreciating just what a great opportunity the election of this position could be for our region. Anyone who's campaigned on the environmental agenda for a long time, and there must be many of you in the room who've done that, anyone who's worked in the political environment for a long period of time, there are plenty of people in the room who've done that before, will know what all the problems are in our region. None of them are new. Why we have a very poor bus service. Bristol and Bath must be the 2 most ill-served cities in the entire country for their bus service. Even worse, for rail services. You don't need to compare to our European neighbours. Just look to our English neighbours in Birmingham or our Welsh neighbours in Cardiff to see what other cities have been able to do with their existing rail networks and with their existing road networks, and think, why haven't we done that here? And the reason is partly because of the fragmentation of local government. It's like all the best intentions of the council leaders, and I recognise what Tim and others will have done over the years to try and make it work. The fragmentation hasn't helped, and the fact that we haven't had a strategic oversight for the last 20 years hasn't helped. But the main gap in delivering what we all know needs to be done has been that no one has had the power to make a difference in our region. That will end whenever, on May the 8th, whichever one of us takes office into this position. We will be able to franchise bus services. We will be able to say to First, to Wessex, and any other operator that wants to work in our area, you will run services later at night out of both cities. You will go to places that people want to be joined up, out to housing estates, to hospitals, for instance. You will have cashless payment to stop all the congestion that happens on our main roads into both of our cities, and contributes to the chronic air quality that we have here in Bath and in Bristol as well. It's a common issue that both cities suffer from, and it ought to be a major public health debating point. But most people simply don't realise that what they're breathing in is deeply damaging to them. But then we will be able to do something about it from next week. And air quality will be at the top of my agenda for making sure that this city and the big neighbour up the road have sustainable communities where we can live, work and invest in a sustainable way going forward. Thank you very much.
Mr. Savage, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm the independent representative, and although I've been marginally involved in politics, I'm not really a politician, and I find the political scene rather difficult. But my interest in this role follows on from having left my rather well-paid job in London 30 years ago, just to stop off for 3 years to run a joint venture partnership operation between businesses, then mostly in Bristol, although we were engaged with Avon County Council as well, to try to begin to look at some of the key problems that Bristol itself faced then. And that led on to be staying here and working mostly with Bristol and Avon before Avon was closed, and then trying to work with the four local authorities to look for things that we could do to make sure our territory improved. And that always revolved very much around transport issues. Transport is identified by businesses as the biggest problem that we have. I don't personally feel it's the biggest problem, but it features. I'm really anxious that there's a lot of misunderstanding about this job, and I think we should all understand it. This isn't about the Metro Mayor, it's about a role that would come alongside and assist the other key elected people in the three territories to try to find common ground on which we can make things better. We can get more money from government, we can get more money from business. Now, when I started the Bristol initiative, the concept was that we would take a large number of very well founded businesses and bring resource to bear on the problems we were facing. And they were then in Bristol the highest homelessness problem outside of London, difficulties with the threat to the shopping centre and matters in education and matters like that. There are challenges that are very strategic, and I think we face strategic challenges, and this job for me is about bringing that resource independently and not influenced by party politics to the assistance of the governance arrangements that already exist and rightfully will continue in this territory. So I think I'm offering it just to say, I wrote a book 11 years ago, in 2011, looking at the future of this territory to 2050. It's called 2050 High in Hope, and my hope was that we could gather the benefits of economic development and make them work for all of us without destroying the environment.
Thank you. I hope that has given you, sorry, I'm not very good technically, given you a flavour of what the candidates think. What we're going to do now is look at one longer question, so ask them to address one particular issue. Again, they're going to be limited on time to 3 minutes. I don't know what that clicking is. If I turn the bloody thing off, can you still hear me?
Yes. I'd like one of these. Why don't you use one of these, please?
I used to be a teacher, so I've got a very loud voice. Okay, so the first question.
Somebody may need it if they've got the hearing aids. It's an access issue.
Does anyone not hear me and want me to turn it back on again? Need to turn back on. Terribly sorry. Okay. First question is up on the screen. Within your 4-year term, other than high cost.
Yes.
Other than high cost schemes, what incremental improvements to existing transport solutions would you implement in Bath? Notice we're interested in Bath here. How would you create a culture where walking and cycling is inclusive to the norm? And I'm going to invite Tim to lead off, followed by Leslie, and they'll have again 3 minutes to address those transport issues.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether we're all going to end up standing up or not, but I will to start. If we all stand up sitting down, please excuse that. It is a vital thing. We're often asked what we're going to achieve. One of the questions this afternoon was in the first 100 days. This one I prefer because you're giving us a slightly longer timescale. But what we've got to do here is really drive the agenda that everybody agrees with. Every one of us, whether it's our council leaders, myself, I'm sure you and the rest of our friends up here, is to drive forward the agenda where we have to break the reliance on the car. Because that is the only way we're going to help solve making some really long-term changes in terms of transport. Now, to do that, we have to start driving forward those options, but also make it clear to everybody within society, with everybody within councils, whether it's our planning initiatives, whether it's our transport departments, that we have to provide a genuine mix of options. I appreciate we are talking about Bath, but even Bath actually has more rural areas, different challenges in terms of buses. So there has to be a mix in Bath as it has to in the rest of the region. We can drive that agenda as the Mayor by raising both the profile of what we need to do in terms of planning, making sure that planning actually reflects transport in any new developments. We've also got to make sure that within planning we're making provision for cycling and walking within those developments. We've got to make sure those things link up as well, so that we're not getting, as we've seen in some instances, new planning developments with certain transport modes, but they don't actually go anywhere and tie into others. So it's got to be a joined up role. We can lead that with our councils, we can lead that within the cities and provide real alternatives. Carrot and stick is a phrase I often use in scenarios like this when I'm talking at council level, is yes, we've got to provide the options, then you can provide the stick. But until you've got the carrot out there to really change people's minds and start delivering with the finance we have, initially in terms of the 30 million, but more importantly in terms of the additional funding we can bring by taking really positive stories to government, we can attract additional funding and make that real sort of sea change in terms of the way we think about our transport. Thank you.
Right, Leslie, followed by Steve.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah? Thank you. So if you can't do feedback like Hendrix, don't bother. So one of the powers the Metro Mayor has is to bring in an integrated ticketing service which should speed up the transport system and also make it cheaper for people. I think one of the things we do have in the west of England is we've got very expensive bus fares. What I like to see is that we need to get people from, it's not just people to people, it's people to work. And when we've got people who are earning their wages, we need to make sure that they can afford to get to work, so we need to put a cap on bus prices. In Bristol they've done this, so there's no reason I don't think why it can't be done in Bath. I think the other thing is for young people still at school until they're 18, that it can be a drain on their parents, or they may not have the money to get to and from school. So I would also like to see free bus passes for young people, as well as keeping free bus passes for disabled and older people as well. Another thing with public transport is that it needs to be more accessible. It's not just about disabled people, it's also about people with pushchairs and shopping. Sometimes you get on the bus, there's nowhere to put your shopping except on a knee. If you've got 3 bags, it can be very difficult. I'd also like to see more cycle lanes, and those cycle lanes to be safer. I've already talked about new build, should be looking at those, how we build in those places for people to cycle, and also thinking about the quality of roads. Where I live out in Radstock, I'm forever phoning up lanes and saying, look, there's another pothole. And in all fairness, they're usually pretty quick at coming and sorting them out. But the problem is they keep reappearing. And the other problem is that people don't report them. And, you know, I'm not the monitor of potholes, but to be quite honest, if you're a cyclist, they're an absolute nightmare and they can be a danger. One of the members of my campaign team is a cyclist who has stopped cycling at night because he's so worried about coming off his bike. And in fact, the other day I saw somebody do precisely that, coming down Park Street in Bristol. Thank you. The other thing I'd like to see is, there is an opportunity to franchise buses. I'd like to see more mixed buses, so not just buses that are green, but also seeing buses that are run in a different way, so cooperative bus services. They do this in London, not all buses are run by private companies, and if we've got that option, then hopefully we can start to see some of those buses replaced on the routes where we're seeing them cancelled. And cancelled bus services is dreadful for some people. I'm out of time, so thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Stephen, followed by John.
Well, the question was about, I guess, what sort of quick hits could we make in this area? What's the sort of low-hanging, about knocking noises? What are the low-hanging fruit that we could actually tackle in the first year, certainly over the four-year term that the Metro Mayor is in place? John has his book, which he promotes at every Hustings. I've got you can find it in good charity shops. I'm in Oxford recently. I've actually got a detailed manifesto for this election. I think I'm the only candidate who's actually written a very detailed manifesto, which you can find online on my website. It does a huge section on transport. So probably short answers. We can't say everything. So please do have a look at that. But there are some things we can do quite quickly that don't cost a lot of money. The bus franchising powers can be used to get that cashless payment. It sounds a trite point, moving to cashless payment, but if we're going to get an integrated system of all the different bus operators and the train operators being easily accessible to everyone, then we do need a common platform in order to get cashless payment. It will speed up bus journeys, give people more confidence that they're going to get a bus that's going to be on time to get them to their hospital appointments or at work. And on the main roads that lead into Bath, such as the London Road, it will stop congestion, or the Bristol Road will stop the congestion building up into the city and will help reduce the chronic air quality. I've got in my manifesto also a plan to reopen 4 new railway stations in the area. The most relevant one here is at Salford, in between Bath and Bristol, which I've discussed with Network Rail. It's perfectly achievable in that time frame and is achievable in cost terms as well. And that would make a big difference to the traffic impact on Bath. We do need to build into all of our plans how we can encourage more people to cycle. And air quality actually is entirely relevant to that, because while you're riding on the road or walking on the pavement, you are most exposed to the diesel fumes and other noxious vapours that are coming out of commercial vehicles in particular. So dealing with air quality will help make cycling more attractive to people. And that's why I'm interested in getting more power from government. This is an opportunity, while this post is created, to ask for extra power from central government to have a charging mechanism so that commercial, dirty, polluting vehicles that are coming into Bath, in particular along the London Road, get a fiscal disincentive to do so, which will deter them and make them go onto a more suitable road for their journey. So some costly solutions, but also some easy low-hanging fruits that I think we can tackle very quickly as well.
John, and then finally Darren.
Stephen, you can't resist your little digs. I've said that the book was only about getting people to think about the future. It actually cost a lot more money. We didn't sell a single one. It was handed out. So obviously somebody didn't like it, or they wouldn't have given it to Oxfam. There's a lot of them there. He says, you can't resist it. Look, I understand these questions about Bath, and I do believe that there are quite quick tactical things we can do, but I implore you to understand that transport solutions are about the territory, and the job is about the territory. And we have to have a strategy that the whole territory can understand and agree about. There will be details that can come in advance of others. Some things will be done first here and some things will be done first there. But the solution to the transport problem is a strategic one across the whole territory. And because we failed to do that over the last 30 years, we failed to come up with the answers quick enough. There have been some better answers, and there are some still in the pipeline, particularly around Bristol. The new guided bus will be a great help, but it's too late. Now, I do think, from talking to the bus operators and others, that there are a few tactical things we can do. My colleagues have already spoken about some of them. Smart ticketing is long been needed and can be done. We're just a bit slow. I think we can pull some clever tricks to get a traffic reduction of the individual use of cars down by 20%. We need to get people to agree to stop using their cars just one day a week, not all on the same day, of course. That was supposed to be funny. So I think there are some things, and talking to the bus companies, I think we could use some of the money, and 30 million is the only extra money currently available on the table. We could use some of that to do something that might well be technically illegal to seduce people out of their cars. I know for sure, I'm the chairman of the hospital in Bristol, I know for sure that I would travel to my hospital job on the bus if I could rely upon its timing. And I'd want to do that. Driving is no fun. The only other thing I would say, so I agree, I see you need it, there are answers, but please think about this in the strategic issue. Cycling is great, it used to be my sport, I was trying to get to 1972 Munich Olympics. I wasn't good enough, but I was trying. A lot of us are getting old. I still go out on my bike, but it gets harder and harder. So let's just remember folk who can't cycle. Thank you.
Darren, something close to your heart, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was going to say, John, that the great innovation that's come along that will help you out these days is the amazing electric bikes that are around. I commend it. More joke. Anyway, it's been our second hustings of the day, so we're really getting going now. The question was about culture and about incremental improvements. So I'll address that directly. There are lots of small things around the culture that is to do with predominantly cars. We are living in a society which is a car culture. Now I think that's starting to break down right from the very early age, where parents feel that they cannot let their children walk or cycle to school, so they are getting into the habit of the car culture from a very early age. We have to start there. It will also help sort out congestion, because everybody knows the roads are better during school holidays. So that's my cultural point. My second cultural point is about businesses understanding that actually it is better for business if the centres of cities are not dominated by cars. We know this. There is good evidence from elsewhere that says that people will enjoy the city centre more if they are able to feel it and experience it as a living thing. Indeed, Bristol has a project called The Living Heart, which is about pedestrianising and opening up for cyclists and public transport the centre of Bristol. I would be really interested to have a similar conversation here in Bath and to see how possible that is. Some incremental improvements. I spotted, when I was at the Create Centre recently, a group of fairly burly, and they were all men, with tabards being shown going out the door with bikes. It turns out that this is a group of HGV drivers whose part of their training is now to go out on a cycling lesson. What an amazing small incremental improvement to change the attitude. Now I would also like to add that cyclists ought to have the opportunity to sit in a lorry cab, because then we might understand it a bit better. Of course, cashless payment system would make things much better. Bike hire schemes for all large hotels, so that tourists are also able to access bikes locally. And a final point about a sustainable business community for transport. So North Bristol has this thing called Suscom, and I think it would be incredibly useful to set up something very similar here, where business leads the conversation that says we would like to provide a different culture in this city. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I hope you're hearing specific things that these people are going to do, these prospective mayors are going to do, rather than generalities which you can just feel in the air. So I'm really hoping that you're getting specific answers to questions that relate to us in Bath. So now we're moving on to the somewhat vexed question of housing. I defy you to say Bath isn't beautiful, but there are massive profits to be made in housing development. Yet there is a huge environmental saving to be made in housing. I don't know the statistics, someone will tell me. There's a vast amount of carbon given off just heating our houses. So in a number of recent housing developments, developers have reduced both the number of affordable homes and the sustainable construction standards, saying they're not financially viable. What would you, as Mayor, do? What would you actually do to ensure the construction of more affordable homes and higher than minimal levels of CO2 emissions? If we could start, please, with Leslie, followed by Stephen.
Thank you. And one thing that has been around is actually some distorted perspectives. Because here I have my manifesto, which you'll find online, and you'll see many very clear issues set out there. So there's one on environment, there's one on Brexit, and there's also one I thought they missed out of this remit, and that's equality. I'll talk about that later on. But with regards to housing, there's no shadow of a doubt we need more council housing, and we failed miserably to provide either any or enough at all. In Bristol, Marvin Rees, who was only elected not quite a year ago, was already building 1,700 council houses. And we desperately need to do that. Where I live out in Radstock, we've had some housing, but it's been by private developers. And where we've tried to get in the houses that we need with the energy efficient and all the rest of it, then we're told time and again it's too expensive. It isn't too expensive for the environment in the long term, and that's a big concern for me. The Metro Mayor will have responsibility for planning, so there will be an opportunity to do something around that and make an impact, because a lot of this role is very much going to be coordinating between not just the three authorities of Bath and North East Somerset, Bristol and South Gloss, but also North Somerset. And there are certain plans already in place, like the spatial plan, which covers the four authorities, like the joint transport plan, that covers the four authorities. So it won't be a question of just the three authorities and the Metro Mayor. At some point there will be involvement from the four authorities, as I've just said. We need to make sure that we challenge developers so we're not coming up to scratch when it comes to sustainability. There's absolutely no excuse for this, and in the long run this is going to benefit us all and not just a few of us. I think the evidence we have at the moment is that with regards to rent, that while people on one hand can't afford to buy, that people also can't afford to rent. And I'd like to see that on one hand we have a living wage, but also we have a living rent as well. I'd also want to work with Acorn to make sure that we have a renting policy that is fair. We've got people that are moving into properties really expensive, they're not fit to live in on occasion. I also would want to work with the Unite Construction Charter, which again is a fair charter. And again, we're looking at skill shortages in that area, so we need to make sure that we're putting in the right things in place so we do get the right build. Thank you.
I think you're getting the hang of how it's all working, aren't you? Do I have to get up? Oh, never mind. Stephen, followed by John.
Well, the question, as I understand it, was about affordability and sustainability. Let's deal with affordability first. And it's a chronic issue here in Bath, where a young person who wants to buy their first property has to borrow 12 times their salary. That is a social disaster for young people who want to stay in their own community. Bath, North East Somerset, the whole region is an incredibly successful and prosperous place. And it's a reasonable aspiration for a young person to want to share in that prosperity in the area that they grew up. So we do have to tackle it and to attract the skilled people that we need in the future as well. The big problem is we haven't built enough. And it's not a recent problem, it's a problem that goes back many decades. So you've got to build more, but it's a question of where you build them and how you build them and the mix of housing that you build. One of the ideas in my manifesto, and there's a big section on housing in it that I hope you'll look at, is to put together what will probably be the largest social enterprise in the west of England. It will be a housing-focused social enterprise which will be jointly owned by the combined authority and eventually maybe the public through community shares as well, to build homes for sale build homes for private rental sector that are properly managed, and that's how the private rental sector really should work, and how it works in other countries, and to reinvest that surplus in building homes for social rent, because that's what we have lost so much of over the last 30 years or so. So that's one idea, and how you crack that. And on sustainability, and this is something that really angers me about what's happened in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years of the coalition government, I was the minister responsible for regulating housing, and I put in place an Act of Parliament called the Infrastructure Act 2015 that had in it raising our housing standards in terms of sustainability to the highest they've ever been, and what's more, requiring house builders to have what we call off-site solutions in order to stimulate the low-carbon economy that we all wanted. So you would have had more electric car charging points, you would have had more retrofitting of older homes in the community. That's the real environmental issue about housing we need to crack. New homes are already built to much higher standards than old homes. In Bristol and Bath, it is the older homes that we need to retrofit. The current Conservative government, that was just called the election, scrapped or held up those standards as almost the first act it did once they were in power on their own. I know a lot of house builders were actually quite angry about that because they've gone on the policy journey with me. So I will work with them locally to put in place something that their tenants and their purchasers would actually find attractive about buying a house or renting a home in Bath. And that's building them to the sustainability standards that we set out in 2014, and I think we can bring back locally. Thank you.
Followed by Dan.
Well, the housing problem has started me off in Bristol 30 years ago. It's totally unacceptable to me that in this modern place, so civilised place I think in the world, we have people who can't afford housing at all and can't get to live in any decent accommodation whatsoever. We've got there by steadfastly not allowing enough properties to be built and not knowing where they should be built in time to make sure that we didn't just build houses, but that we built communities with all the facilities. So we've got to do something about it. And I'm increasingly worried sitting here about the way the questions come and the way they're answered. It was a bitter lesson, but I took it at one of the other hustings that the local authority leaders pointed out to me. This is a joint venture job, and nothing can be done on their own by whoever gets this job. It's got to be done by the leaders, which includes the Metro Mayor, and the Metro Mayor's got to facilitate and help and guide perhaps the way. So I worry about what the Metro Mayor can do. The partnership could do it first of all by agreeing on aspects that we can take. I want to work on it. I think that there are ways of doing it. Again, talking to developers, I think many developers are up for a change. My position is this: we must have more houses. We must address the problem of affordable housing. And anybody who tries to avoid the provision of affordable housing in a proper context of general build, and anybody who tries to avoid attending to the challenges of the environment must not be allowed to carry on. These are things that have just got to be dealt with. We must give people homes that they can afford. It's the start of the rest of living your life. How we do it, I'll be frank with you, at this moment, I don't know. But I hope that in partnership and working together, we can do more than we've done in the last 30 years.
So Darren and then Tim.
This is an issue that's close to my heart, partly because I'm on the board of the Bristol Community Land Trust, and we've just spent 4 years working on a project that nearly bankrupted us at least 3 times in order to build 16 affordable units. And part of the problem is this criteria of affordability, which seems to revolve pretty much around reducing the price of houses by 20%. Now, if you take 20% off a £500,000 house, that is still not affordable. Nowhere near affordable. So this is about a complete change in the way that we think it through. The way that we, the Community Land Trust, do it is through shared ownership. So the people that join the trust, end up with ownership of half a house. Not only that, they can put in what is referred to as sweat equity, their own time and effort, to be part of the building process, to build the community as well as the housing, in order to end up with some equity in the process. Now, it's that kind of thinking that is going to actually make these processes affordable. The other thing I think we can bring in is a presumption in favour of those organisations which are prepared to offer higher levels of sustainability and higher percentages of affordable housing. And that will start to facilitate this process, because at the moment what we're in is a conflictual planning process whereby developers identify some land where they can make a nice bit of profit. They will then go through planning, people will object, it will end up through with the Secretary of State, and it will get overruled and pushed through. That's a bit of a simplification, obviously, but it's the developers with big pockets for legal bills that are likely to win. Whereas, we have the opportunity of groups of people coming together now who are saying, don't build on my green belt. The Hannam group was the one I visited. But over here, they took me to see a 5.75 acre brownfield land site, which is lying derelict, which is owned, land banked by Tesco's. We have to confront that, if necessary, using CPO in order to get that land back and build community housing. Sustainability has to be designed in, and that is absolute rubbish that this is unaffordable. Exeter City Council are producing passive house standard homes for older people. That means those older people don't pay any energy bills in their homes, solving fuel poverty as well as sustainability issues at the same time. I believe we can have a standard in the region that any development over 20 units can be net energy positive by 2020. Thank you.
It's a sort of fanfare, Tim.
Sorry, I thought somebody was trying to take up Leslie's comment about people. How are we going to deliver more affordable homes, and how can we, as Metro Mayor, help drive down the CO2 emissions? That's the question as I understand it. A Metro Mayor who actually does work with the council leaders can make a difference. I know, being involved in leadership in councils, that is a will, that is something our councils do want to see happening. We all recognise the need for more affordable homes. I've long said that we need to be building more homes where people want to live and building the sort of homes that they want. So if you actually think about that statement, that does include affordable homes. One of the problems we've got at the moment is that developers want to build in green fields. I understand that because we've sat down and talked about the commercial aspect with them. However, even if there's a provision for affordable homes in a green field outside Bath, I'd respectfully suggest to developers they won't be affordable by the very nature of the people that are going to live there will still need to come into Bath or to where they're working, where there's other communities are, where there are other supports are. So we've got to slightly change the way we think about this. It is not just a line on a planning application. It has to be thought through more carefully. We do need, therefore, to start releasing more of our brownfield sites. I appreciate that does cost more to developers. Therefore, with councils and with a mayor who's going to develop a housing development fund, we can find ways of bringing that brownfield land into being able to be developed and provide the homes that we all need where we need them. And therefore, by doing that, close to where work is, close to where communities are, schools are, and reducing the reliance on transport, getting in the car and so on. So I think we need to start thinking about it in those sort of ways. I completely agree that we need to think about different ways of developing. I commend Darren on what he's trying to do, but we need to be able to drive that forward far more as a mayor. So yes, we need to be working with our housing associations and other builders and providers. That's an absolute given from me, and again I know that our councils are trying to do it. CO2, very critical. I met with both people from the construction industry, but also from the energy and tech industries last week. They were talking about how they can now use smart meters to analyse when people need electricity in their homes, and actually when you start analysing how that can have a real big effect on the amount of energy that's being burnt in that house, it can have a huge effect. So we can apply technology to the way that we're developing to start helping bring down those CO2 emissions. I know that Baines are already working, and I did write this down to make sure in their placemaking plan, new construction standards. So those are things that we can implement with our councils to start making some real differences. So I hope I'm trying to put there a package that will meet all those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next question, Transition Bath have funded this ourselves, and we would very much like you to make us a donation on your way out or on your way in, so that we can pay for it. Otherwise, you will work to do the washing up. So please, drop some money in our box on your way out. Yes, there's enough of you here to more than pay for it. The third and last of the long questions. Obviously, Bath has 2 universities, and research shows that population has higher than average levels of education, but proportionally lower than average wage levels from an economy dominated by retail and hospitality. Anyone here want to open yet another coffee shop? So, our question to the prospective mayors would be, and please specifics rather than generalities, what would you do to build a more balanced economy in the area of jobs and skills? And we'll start with Stephen, followed by John, followed by Darren.
Well, we're lucky in a way that our starting point is a lot better than most other city regions, that we live in the most prosperous city region outside London. But that prosperity is not evenly shared, either geographically across the region. So there are some parts of South Bath that don't feel that prosperity, and there will be towns and villages further to the south of Bath, such as the Summer Valley, where that prosperity is not necessarily felt as well. So part of what the Metro Mayor will need to do, working with the local authorities, is to try and attract employers into different parts of the region. It's a reverse problem in the north of Bristol, where the economy is massively overheated at the M4 and 5 interchange and in South Gloucestershire. But here we do need to rebalance the economy and to get more employers in some of our towns and villages to the south of the city, so that people can work closer to home. But we also need to improve the transport offer, so that people in those communities who do need to work in Bath can travel sustainably into the cities, and that needs to be done too, so the transport plans are relevant there as well. Next year, the Combined Authority gets devolved the skills budget from central government. So devolution is a journey here. And I think that is a major opportunity to make sure that all of our colleges and private sector training providers are matching up their skills provision with how our economy is going to grow in the future. I know that Bath College is making a major investment at the moment in terms of its hospitality offer, in terms of training local people, and I think that would be great for the city. But we do face a challenge going ahead. This is where someone says bingo on the platform, because I'm now going to mention Brexit. That there is a challenge coming up for us, that a lot of the people who work in the hospitality industry in Bath, a lot of people who work at the RUH as well, a lot of the people who work in the highly skilled, highly paid jobs in both cities are our fellow Europeans. Now, as a Liberal Democrat, I think Brexit is a possible disaster, and I do hope we can work to prevent it over the next 2 years. But a responsible politician, and that's what I want to be in this position, needs to prepare us for that difficult journey ahead. So I would work with the business community, with the hospitality sector, with the training providers to see just what a shock this is going to provide to us. And if we're going to end freedom of movement of people working in these key industries in our cities, how can we upskill the people in our locality to make sure that the economy isn't dragged down by Brexit?
Mr. Savage, that was a very weary getting to your feet there.
I'm weary. I'm aging. Linking the outputs of the universities to the payment level of people who work here is spurious. Actually, the problem is the young people who have not been educated and can't find their way into decent jobs. So one of the things I would hope we would be doing in partnership is making a clear statement about our attitude towards pay. We must be certain that in this territory, which is one of the richest in the United Kingdom, that we will ensure fair wages. And then I think we've got to do some work with employers to get them to understand that they won't make their profit by keeping the wages of people down. We must help them and educate them into reshaping their businesses so that the flow of money, the way they bill for their services, comes through in a proper way. They remain competitive, but we pay everybody a fair wage. The people that get the university education, particularly here, go off somewhere else. We keep quite a lot of them in Bristol. So colleges are going to feature greatly in this. I've worked on it for years, and very unsuccessfully, because once we got going with the Learning and Skills Council, some minister in one of the governments decided we needed a change and we were just closed down. But it revolves around an understanding that we would believe about our place, that people should start by being paid a fair wage for whatever they did, and we would look at how we can upskill everybody, so that you might enter the hospitality trade as a cleaner, but you've got the chance to develop your skills into all aspects of it, and that would enable you to move on when you've learned some more skills.
Darren?
I'd like to commend my fellow candidates, because I think this is one of those areas where we share a desire to live in a more equal society. And there are some elements. I know that this was focused on skills, but it's part of for me, it's part of a much bigger discussion. Because whilst we might all wish for greater equality, we're living within an economic system which focuses almost entirely on profit, on this idea of economic growth and trickle down that's going to benefit. And we can bang on about, reducing the gap and all those kind. I'm sure that some of those things are going to help, but there needs to be a more fundamental shift to understanding that that process of growth is not going to get us to where we want to be in the end game. And I think as a transition movement, you understand that better than most. I was reminded actually about the terror that business expressed when we talked about a minimum wage, never mind a living wage. And isn't it interesting that actually the vast majority of businesses have got on with that, brought in the minimum wage without too much of a problem. It's the care system that is now at breaking point because it can't afford the minimum wage. Isn't it terrible that it's the public sector that is now struggling, when it was the business that was saying, we can't afford a minimum wage? Well, they can. And we need to get to the point where the whole of society understands that with greater equality, everyone is better off. Even the rich do better. If you've read The Spirit Level, a book I commend to you, 30 years of research into equality that shows that even the rich are better off in a more equal society. So, back to skills. We're facing a period coming up now where up to 1 in 4 jobs are at risk of being lost due to automation. Not everyone can retrain into these, creative jobs and service sector. And I think we need to think again about how we would like to see our economy work in the region. And if I was in the job, I would be wanting us to lead on a circular economy which focuses on the circulation of money that means we are all going to be better off within that system. It's fundamental, but a huge challenge to try and tackle this edifice of economic thinking. But those small elements that I know the transition movement is leading on are starting to show signs. And I'm sure most of you have seen the Demain film about what can we do about it. Absolutely brilliant. If you haven't, do watch it.
Darren, oh, well done. About to exercise unlimited power. Didn't get around to it. Tim, Tim, followed by Leslie.
Thank you. I'm just going to look over my shoulder because I'm going to try and answer the question, which is what would you do to build a more balanced economy in the area of jobs and skills? That is something that the Mayor can make a difference on. And really I want to talk to you about what I can do. Yeah? And I know that to do that it will involve working again with our council leaders, with our other authorities around who have got elements of control in those areas, and with government. But let's talk about jobs. Yes, I think the question relates to the tourism economy, retail, hospitality. Yes, it is vital for the area. It brings in a lot of money into the region. So we must try and support that. But we've got to provide a lot more opportunities in Bath and the area in new businesses. So the Mayor can help in terms of encouraging the enterprise zone. I will do that in Bath. We can encourage Bath to become a regional, national and global centre in terms of digital and creative industries. We're doing that really well here already. We've got to say, and I'm answering the question about what I can do for you, I can help drive that forward. Because again, I know there is a will to do that, both with our council leaders and with the LEPs and the other economic boards. So we can make a difference in those areas. That's how we can help broaden that economy in this region. To do that, yes, transport, housing, infrastructure is all critical because business tells us that's what we need. So again, we've got to focus on some of those key elements because it will have a benefit to us in terms of providing a more balanced economy here. Skills we can make a real difference on. The second year of the term will provide 19 plus skills and responsibility for those. We need to be going back, I think, and exciting, motivating and making a difference to children who are a lot younger as well. We need to be going into schools as a champion to explain what we have on offer here. It's far too late in most people's career when they're at school, when they start getting careers advice. It's usually by the time which they've either lost interest in what they're going to do as a career or too late. We need to excite children at a much younger age about what we've got on offer here. We've talked about the digital economy. Children love playing with phones and all the rest of the digital equipment. You show them that they can get involved in that industry locally, they see a career mind. I work in a company where we keep an aero engine made out of Lego. I'm not suggesting we move Rolls-Royce into Bath, but it's a scenario that happens at the moment. I'm doing that in my day job. We're showing how children at school get excited by seeing a Lego aero engine, want to become engineers. Those are the sort of things that a champion who's genuinely going to try and address those regions for those aspects for you. Those are the sort of differences I can make to help everybody. Thank you.
Right, back.
Excuse me, I think it's Leslie.
Means. That means. Which is Leslie Manson. Really, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We're all getting to that sort of stage now. To the point I'm forgetting what my name is.
Leslie Manson.
I'm going to say this only once probably. I think the government's been quite clever with the Metro Mayor remit because what it's done is put together some really important things that do link together. So housing, economy, transport and the skills agenda really do fit together very cleverly. So I said that only once because I screwed up the economy and screwed up Brexit, but anyway. But I talked earlier on about equality, and at the moment I've got equality in my manifesto, but I'm working on a much more detailed charter. What I want to see is people signing up to that, because when you look at this, the most wealthiest region in the country outside of London, that you'll find that black, Asian minority people, ethnic minority people, earn 10% less than white. So I don't know how we manage that, because that's not lawful. And also, if you look at women, you'll find that women earn less than men, that the pay gap is bigger than anywhere else in the country, and that's true for both full-time and part-time workers. So again, we've had an Equal Pay Act since 1970, and we're still not managing to keep what the law says we should. What that means is that we are losing out on the skills that people have to offer. And that is meaning that we're going to lose that from the economy. One of the biggest drivers for economic success is actually equality. If you look at somewhere like Amsterdam, it's got the most mixed community and it's one of the wealthiest cities across Europe. So why aren't we taking a leaf out of their book? And it isn't actually rocket science, and it doesn't cost a lot to do it. For me, it is about the living wage. Why don't we have a West of England living wage? What I want to see to link people in with jobs is having a transport commissioner. Transport is going to be one of the most biggest issues we've got to deal with, especially in terms of congestion. But again, it links in with the skills agenda. If we can't get people to college, then how can they pick up those skills? The other thing I'd like to do is make sure that we can fill the skills gap. So there's lots of areas where we don't have people that can do the jobs. Construction is one, and I want to work with the Unite the Union, of which I'm a member, work with their construction charter. The digital industries is another one. And in fact, the digital industries have got good, well-paid jobs. And there's very few women in that industry, and there's very few black, Asian and minority ethnic people. So I don't know what they're doing, but that's certainly not right either. So I also want to make sure that we have a very mixed economy. So it's not just about big business and small business, it's also about social enterprise, and also about what I'd like to see is bringing in a co-op development agency to help promote some of that as well. Thank you.
Okay. What I'm going to do now is reorganise ourselves. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to stretch, or if you have to leave. I suppose maybe we'll do this. While wherever she is, Esther gets the roving mic. So we'll have 1 minute while we just reorganise ourselves. Then I'm going to open the floor to general questions. Please bear in mind that I am not going to allow questions as to why we've got a metro there. That's a different discussion. We do have one. The democratic deficit, or any of those. I'm interested in specific questions that the candidates can give specific answers to. So please, questions that are specific to us, and please no long rambling on your hobby horse type questions, because I'll cut you off, and I'm afraid if I'm rude, that's just tough. So there's 1 minute, stretch, talk, and then we'll go into the general questions.
Hang on, I'm turning it off. I think I've got it to compensate for that.
You can use this time to give us your donation, by the way. 1 minute, back to this. Obviously, talking to each other is. Thank you. What's happened to my computer? I just wanted to go. Just the last thing up, so that you know who we are. There we are. That's us. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take short questions. I'm going to ask the. It would be really good if they were specific questions. Had a specific answer. Are we all sorted in here? Yes, Mr. Shelford.
My question to the panel is about planning. One of the issues about old houses in Bath is that we can't insulate and put down glazing in them because of the law around planning. What would you do about trying to change that, to make it better to make these older houses more efficient from an energy perspective?
Right. Sorry, I was distracted there. John, you will start.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that the Metro Mayor on their own has much to do with it. I mean, I have a very personal, common sense approach to this. At some point, we'll have to realise that what the windows look like and what they might look like a bit differently is insignificant to what we can gain from making the houses work. So it amazes me. The British, of course, steer their ships by looking out over the wake. What was good yesterday remains good. I mean, it's obvious to me that we've got to make some changes. I think all the Metro Mayor can do as far as planning is concerned, I look to an expert, is make a voice. It's not the Metro Mayor's job. But I do think there's a common sense thing that we ought to face up to. We won't change the wonderful fabric of some of these buildings by getting efficient about the glass.
Aaron, please.
I think one of the issues we bump into is that there's a divide between, or certainly in talks I've been to, between the heritage and civic society groups and the environmental groups. And there's been a fair amount of antagonism between the two. But actually, the effects of climate change and air quality issues, acidification in the air, is playing havoc with older buildings, and there needs to be a coming together of those two bits of the debate that will then influence the way in which we do planning. The other small point I'd make is that the good news is I've been doing some work with a company which has developed a system of applying thermoglazing to single glazed sash windows that you can get through without planning permission, without affecting the heritage status of the building, and cuts down the energy loss by 70% through those windows. I'm not on commission, but you can ask me about it afterwards.
Thank you. And Tim?
Thank you. You're right. Planning at the moment does stall an awful lot of things, whether it's the particular point you're addressing or certain other aspects. So yes, we need to work with our councils in addressing that. We need to see that's built into our plans in terms of the way we work. So that's something we can do in terms of working with councils and council policy. However, I've already touched on some of the things that I think we can do in new homes, and a lot of those can be fitted to listed homes and to lots of other buildings. You know, I work with a trust that looks after a medieval barn. Even the development we're doing there, we're mindful of insulation. We're mindful of how we can make differences there. Why? Because yes, energy costs matter even at that level. So if we can drive ways of actually looking, as I said, at smart meters and other technology that you can also fit into homes, we can also make a difference with those homes at the moment where people actually aren't prepared to change some of the exterior views, but we can actually invest and look